Hey guys, I am Lana. This is from Corporate to Crystals. We're back for another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the collective shadow surrounding dark feminine energy. And the first thing I want to say is the word dark. Like I've talked about this a million times before, but like everything has light and dark within it. Dark does not necessarily mean bad or evil. And that's the first thing we need to get clear on this, okay? But our collective has a massive shadow that needs to be cleared and dismantled around viewing dark as evil, and specifically in this video, dark feminine energy and the suppression of the feminine and the dark feminine aspects by suppressing those even deeper. Not only against the feminine energetically and embodiments, but it also then instills such deep fear within feminines to where they themselves are fearful of their own dark aspects, their own dark feminine energy, which we all have, including masculines in their own feminine aspect, right? So this is a very important topic. So buckle up. Okay, cool. So there's tons of limiting beliefs, tons of like preconceptions and programming within our collective consciousness of what a woman should be. Like, what is a woman, right? And in my last video about the patriarchy, I talked about how the patriarchy has created a narrative of what a man is, and it's a completely false narrative. It's a narrative of essentially like their abuse of power, suppressing the feminine and putting themselves, defending themselves as superior to women, which is false. In God's kingdom, masculine and feminine are in equal union in the highest realms, and that manifests into the third dimension, the physical material world. Therefore, it is equal. So just like the masculine, who's allowed to have their dark traits and everyone can honor and celebrate it or whatever, the feminine also has those, and she should be honored and celebrated in all of her complexities as well. But because the patriarchy created a narrative to maintain themselves and defend themselves as the superior energetic or gender, the feminine was then suppressed to fit into a box, into a couple boxes actually, and we'll get into that here in a second. So our collective has to work through this because we have to get back to equality and like authenticity. So there's a lot of confusion around dark feminine energy. It's a very dynamic energy and it's very contradictory. I embody this energy. That's why it's like very near and dear to my heart. So you can tell if you've been following my channel for a while, if you know my energy well enough, you're like, who is she? Like, what the heck is going on with this girl? One video, I'm like this sweet little thing. And the next video, I'm like warrior, whatever, right? This is the divine feminine energetics operating, contradictory, confusing. It hasn't been able to be expressed in like for so long within our society that people are really confused by it. But now that Sophia consciousness is back, we need to get really comfortable with the fact that like this is what true feminine energy in union and balance is. Okay, and we'll talk about the differences between light and dark here in a second. For centuries, the dark side of the feminine has been described as negative, while the light side of the feminine has been celebrated and honored and viewed as superior. So even within our own self as a feminine energetic, myself included, like throughout my journey, the dark aspects of the feminine energy were suppressed or like shamed or hidden or whatever. And the light ones were considered appropriate and were considered socially acceptable and things of that sort. The patriarchy, of course, like uplifts that and maintains that. And that's the way they view feminines as well. So the patriarchy has convinced all of us, including us feminines, when we're the ones who embody the energy. So we should be the ones standing in our power and creating the narrative of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a feminine embodiment. But the patriarchy essentially what has happened is they convinced us that the deep, dark, raw, sensual, divine, feminine energetics, which are the natural energetics of a goddess, they convinced all of us by suppressing those parts and shaming them and telling us that they are not good. They're not feminine. They're not worthy. They're not ladylike. Because that is what happened, essentially like massive gaslighting energetically, they then deemed the goddess, the divine feminine, as being dangerous. They deemed her as not feminine. They deemed her as shameful, dirty, and a whore. They project all sorts of their own insecurities onto her simply because our patriarchal society has told us for so long that those aspects of the feminine are not good. But they're fine with masculines. Masculines can have all of that. But the feminine, no. She needs to be like a good girl. She needs to be kind and soft and light. But any of her darker sides, that's not ladylike. That's not feminine. That's not a woman. If it is, then that woman is dirty. That woman is shameful. That woman is not a wife. That woman is not deemed appropriate, right? So, only the light is acceptable in our society right now with feminine energetics, which is not the divine blueprint. Dark feminine energy is often confused with the feminine shadow. And so I think this is a big part of why masculines project onto feminines this way. There is a feminine shadow, and some of the traits within the feminine shadow where wounded feminines, and we've all been there, so I'm not shaming anyone, but wounded feminines who have not healed yet and they have not stepped into their divine feminine dark femininity, or divine feminine dark feminine energetics, the wounded traits look like people-pleasing, codependency, lack of confidence, lack of self-worth, being manipulative, being controlling, think femme fatale behavior, right? Drama queen tendencies, inability to create boundaries, difficulty maintaining female relationships, and inability to speak your truth or stand up for yourself. Okay, so that's like the collective shadow for the feminine. But because that is what a lot of men or masculines, wounded masculines, because that's what they attract, they tend to project that box onto dark feminine energy embodied in a divine feminine. So if a divine feminine is sitting in her dark feminine energy, they don't know what that is. Because they don't know what that is, it's confusing to them. They're confused. So they try and pick the closest thing that they can possibly understand, which is wounded feminine energy. And so they assume that divine feminine sitting in her dark, comfortable with her dark feminine energetics, they then project onto her all of these things. Low self-worth, people-pleasing, codependency, like all of these things, and fit her into the box of she must be a wounded feminine. And that is what they're very used to attracting. So, of course, they just project all of that onto her. So if she doesn't behave in the same way as that box that they already know so well, of a wounded feminine, if she doesn't behave in the same ways as that narrative of putting her in that box, then she is shunned. And I talked about this in the other video, so I don't want to get too much into it. She's suppressed, she's shunned, she's silenced. The patriarchal societies view it as a threat to the system. She's ungovernable and she is a problem, something that needs to be solved. Get it away from them because they don't understand it and they are the kings of the castle. So then the collective shadow has some very deep-rooted belief systems that needs to be transmuted. And some of them around the dark feminine energetics are that she's evil. She's a witch. She's a bitch. She's a demon. She's whatever. She's dangerous. She should be punished. She needs to be isolated. There's something wrong with her. There's something wrong with that one. She's harmful. we need to reject her, deny her, suppress her, ignore her, isolate her, push her out of society, right? She should feel shameful. She's a shameful woman. She's not even a woman. I don't know what happened. That one's a lemon. I don't know what that one is. When in actuality, she's not a villain. She's not a whore. She is actually here to evoke transformation within the collective. She's embodying an evolutionary energetic to invite not only other women to step into their power so we can break this patriarchal system, so we can get back to equality for all, but she's also inviting men, if they're interested, to heal themselves. You know, that's like really what it is. So this dark feminine energetic is so much more than what the patriarchy has been like creating a narrative of what is going on with her. They project a bunch of nonsense on her because rather than actually trying to get to know her, right? She's actually very mature and very sophisticated, but she's been through lots of transformation. She's been through a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, and that darkness she then transmutes into power. And the pain turns to power, turns to wisdom, and she now is here to help evolve the collective in a variety of ways, right? This is the power of dark feminine energy. Every single person has the ability to tap into this energy. But for us to be suppressing it within women, that is our feminine power. That is what they are so scared of. They view feminines who are empowered, they view them as dangerous because we are powerful. And that is a threat to the patriarchal system. When we are in our own power, it then requires them to have to be in theirs, so they have to behave better. We're not going to enable their behavior when we're in our own power. They have to actually like treat us with respect because we have self-worth. Right? We have self-worth. We're not codependent. We like meet our own needs. We whatever. And because of that, masculines who are very insecure and they would prefer a weaker woman who they can control, who fits into the patriarchal boxes that they already know so they can control it. They know the narrative. They can psychologically manipulate these people. They already know their next steps. They understand the whole thing. Rather than someone who's actually in connection with their dark feminine energetics, which is something that they don't understand. They're not connected to it themselves. And so because of that, they're confused. They don't know what's going on over there. So they'd rather go to something that's more familiar, something that's more easy to control, someone that is also insecure, right? And that's not to shame on people, but this is what is happening. So the dark feminine energetics are shunned and shamed and pushed away and demonized and threatened because they are actually a threat to the system. Because they can see through the depths and the darkness and the shadows of the collective psyche as well as individual embodiments. It is not something opposed to the light. So people view darkness as opposed to the light, where it's, think about the yin yang symbol. It's creating a whole. It's not evil. It is not. Not all darkness is evil. Some people navigate dark energy in order for good. And we'll get into that in a second. So because this energetic is suppressed, because it is deemed not worthy in the patriarchal system, it drives fear into women that they cannot actually be in touch with that part of themselves. Because they're going to be tortured. They're going to be burned at the stake. They're going to be persecuted. They're going to be killed because that entire aspect is so powerful. It is a threat to the system. So what better way to get rid of the threat than to try and kill it? Get rid of it. Dark feminine traits can be perceived as unfeminine. That's one of the masculines love doing that. Is like if you're embodying your dark feminine energetics, they can't overpower you. And because they can't overpower you and they can't control you and they can't manipulate you, that means you're unfeminine, you're aggressive, you're a problem, you're difficult, you're like whatever. No, you're just not easily manipulated. And they do not like that. That doesn't fit into their patriarchal system at all. So they call you not ladylike when you're sitting there being like, I'm an actual and fully embodied goddess, but that's fine. So you're incredibly deeply misunderstood. But because our patriarchal society, systemically as well as embodiments, run the show, it forces individuals who are embodying their full goddess energetics, their full divine feminine energetics, to kind of like be ostracized, isolated, away from others, because people don't understand it. People are confused by it. They try and put her in a box of toxic femininity, wounded feminine energetics, and she doesn't fit in that box. That's not who she is, but that's the only narrative they know. So they project their own stuff and their own stories onto her. When in actuality, dark feminine energy wakes up the truth of who we are, both on an individual embodiment level as well as collectively. That is the feminine power, okay? She's an empowered, untamed, regenerative system of the feminine principle. So the mother god aspect, the creatrix, she creates life. She brings every single man. This is so like, I'm like, what the hell? Every man is here on this planet, or every single human being is here because they were birthed through a creatrix, a feminine embodiment, a woman. And because you were birthed through a womb, that is dark feminine energy, creation energy, creatrix energy, mother god energy. So you wouldn't be here. Like literally, you wouldn't be here. Now the masculine has an important role too, but my point is the entire time they're suppressing the exact energy, dark feminine. Do you think that giving birth is like rainbows and butterflies? No. You're going through a transformative death and rebirth process. Not only emotionally, spiritually, physically, the whole thing. It is dark feminine energy. So a lot of women are actually more in touch with their dark feminine energy as they go through like motherhood, as they transform into becoming a mother. Because that dark energy, they have to face their fears and transform and regenerate as they go through that process. So it's the powerful force of nature. It cannot be controlled. It is not understood by the masculine energetics because it's not their energetics. It's not theirs to really understand. But they sure love to suppress it. They sure love to try and put it in a box and try and make it make sense to them and try and disempower it and put it down and all this stuff. It's ridiculous. It's often associated with the darker aspects of nature and the psyche because it's deep, it's mysterious, it's emotionally intelligent, it's mystical, right? I'll get into this in a second. It has to do with power and inner strength, not outer strength, right? There's a difference. And so it is a key part of individuals embracing their authentic selves. It is a key energetic required for people to embrace their authentic selves, to face their fears, to transform, which, by the way, we really, really need on the planet right now. Like, for real, you know? We all need to be in touch with the dark feminine energetics within us as a collective as well as individually, because we all are needing to transform and rebirth into a new collective. So we can't be suppressing this energy anymore. There are a few archetypes or goddess embodiments that you may be familiar with that you can totally do research on, who embody dark feminine energy very well and very kind of like as part of their mission. Hindu goddess Kali Ma. Kali is the goddess of death and destruction. That's dark feminine energy right there. And if you know her story, you know how powerful she is. And so dark feminine energy is power and strength. It is very, very much so. Isis. The story Isis and Osiris. Osiris is Isis's husband, who There's a death and resurrection story associated with them. Again, dark feminine energy, right? She was known to help the dead enter into the afterlife. Dark feminine energy. Lilith. Lilith has a complicated story mythologically, where in the creation story, which I'm not going to get into in this story, but there's a lot of parts of the Bible that there is some complications around. When we talk about Mother and Father God in equal union, then some of the stories start like not making so much sense. And I'm going to save that for a different video. But the mythology around Lilith is that she was Adam's first wife. And she refused to submit to Adam because she understood her worth. She understood her power. And she was making conscious choices that the union wasn't working for her. So she would prefer to not be with him. And so then they brought Eve in. And I wasn't there, I don't know. But that's the mythology around it, right? That is dark feminine energy. She refuses to submit to a man for whatever her reasons were. I don't know Adam, and I wasn't there. But she stepped into her power, and she was not afraid of the unknown. So she ventured out. I love it. Get it, Lilith? And then the concept of like the Black Madonna, the archetype rather of the Black Madonna. Definitely like dark feminine energy. So there's light and dark in all things. And we need to seek a balance within all of ourselves of those two from a feminine energetic perspective. So here are some things that are light-esque. Light feminine energy. Softness. Nurturing. Healing. Playful. Compassionate. Familial. Kind. Inward focused, understanding, receptive, radiant, adorable, collaborative, and patient. That's the light feminine. That's the acceptable one. That's the one that the patriarchy loves her. And so do we. We love her too, right? Like she's dope. And then there's the dark feminine energy. Dark feminine energy is mysterious. It's mystical. It's full of magic. It is dark. It's full of depth. It's complicated. It's powerful. It creates life. It births life into existence. That's power. It's chaotic. It's assertive. It can be quite assertive and confronting, right? It's sensual. It's connected to sexuality and sexual liberation. It's strong, it's passionate, it's fierce, it's full of rage, and it converts that rage into intentional action for social progress and change, right? It's wise, it's transformative, it's authentic, it's no bullshit, it's destructive. Because destruction is a part of creation. Sometimes you have to destroy something to create anew, right? Death and rebirth. So sometimes it can, that's why it's such a threat to the system. It can truly destroy the system because it is deep and it is not afraid of the unknown, right? It's not afraid of the void. And it is embracing the death portals that come along with transformative processes. And it's magnetic. People love to hate it and hate to love it. It is, to other people, it can be very intriguing, confusing, but like intriguing. Not only is the individual embodying that energy very curious, but also people are very curious about that energy. It's chaos. It's messy. What is going to happen next? It's fun to watch. People love to view you as a challenge, something that they need to win or something. But then they realize that the challenge never really like goes away. You have to not try to control it, dominate it, overpower it. And if you do all that and you just accept it, then you're going to get the best of all the worlds. enchanting and mysterious, not a pushover, very direct, like not afraid to tell you exactly what the heck they're thinking. Can come off cold, for sure. But the coldness is through boundaries and also understanding what they're here to do. Understanding through the death and rebirth process. For example, you become a mother. I now understand my role. I now understand I have a purpose to raise this child, right? That shit got serious. So yes, that energy can come off cold and needing boundaries because they now are protective of their child. They are now a warrior fighting to protect this child and nurture this child and keep this child safe. It is their duty, their role, their honor, right? Their job. Definitely has learned how to control their emotions for the most part. And is kind of like an energy where it's like, don't mess with her. And it's like, yeah, don't. I wouldn't encourage you to. It's drawn to the shadows and it loves radical change. Okay, cool. So that's like the dark feminine energy, and that's how it's currently being suppressed and like the narrative around it within our current society and things of that sort. So then we talk about the masculines. How does the masculine play into this other than the patriarchy and all that stuff? Well, similarly to the feminines, they also have light and dark within their energetics, and they have a wounded state or a unhealed state and a evolved state. And so when we're talking about the shadow elements of the masculine collective, just like we did with the feminines had codependency and people pleasing and not being able to speak their truth and things like that. The masculine collective has their own shadow, which I referenced a lot of it in the patriarchy video. But they are very pleasure focused or, very sexual focused. They do things in the shadows and yada, yada, yada. There's all sorts of stuff with the masculine shadow. But then there are divine masculines who are stepping into their light and dark aspects of their divine masculine energy. They have conquered their shadow. They have made friends with their shadow. And because of that, they're not afraid of their dark aspects. The same way the feminine is not afraid of her dark aspects because she had to conquer her shadow as well, right? So the dark masculine energy is in a healthy relationship with his dark masculine energy, or the masculine in a divine masculine energetic. He has control over his sexuality and his emotions. He is a force to be reckoned with, just like the feminine is, but in a totally different way. He can handle a dark feminine energetic. He's not consumed by her. He's not overpowered by her. He doesn't go seek a weaker woman because he feels like she's dangerous and untamed and like he won't be consumed by her because he's more willing to understand her because he has an understanding of himself. Okay? He won't judge her. He himself has these same dark aspects that he can see in her because he knows them in himself. He has done the work in himself to be able to actually see those dark aspects and what they mean and what their power is and what their importance is and things of this sort. He doesn't view her as being a whore. He views her as an equal who has a dark side because she's a human being, just like all of us. And that makes you dynamic. That makes you normal, He is aware that human beings have a dark side. It's human nature to have a dark side. If you're hiding from your dark side, you are hiding. That's a dangerous place to be because you're hiding from an entire side of yourself that means you have an imbalance, and that imbalance will catch up to you. So you either acknowledge your shadow and work through it, or life will do it for you. So for the masculine to be touch with his own dark masculine energy, it is a more empowered position for him to be. He has control and understanding and awareness and love for that aspect of himself. Therefore, he can actually see, acknowledge, not judge or shame it within another as well. He doesn't fear the dark because he understands the dark is not necessarily bad. It's a part of your evolutionary process. Now, masculines who are not connected to the dark within themselves yet, we'll call them light masculines, right? They secretly desire dark feminine energy because they're curious. There's something magnetizing about it. There's something about it, you know? They hate to love it and love to hate it, and they seek it. They want it. They desire it, but they also feel shame around that. Like, it brings up so many like complicated feelings. Like, they don't know what to do with it. So what happens, or what can happen, is society is not, they have a narrative that the dark feminine energy, it's not socially acceptable. It's not socially appropriate. So they really shouldn't go in that direction. What they should do instead is just get a socially acceptable light feminine, someone who is in their light feminine energy. She's more digestible. She's not a threat to the system. She's not an issue for anyone. On paper, she's going to look really, really good. She's going to make them look good because they're insecure, you know? So they need things that make them feel better about themselves because it's material focus. They're trying to focus on their appearance, even if it's not like their physical appearance. It's how do they look? How are they going to look? How is this going to look? Is this dark feminine chick going to make me look crazy? Is she socially acceptable? I don't think so. I may as well just pick this one. This one's more digestible. So they pick a light feminine wife, let's say, partner. And as they pick that, again, they're in a wounded state because they're insecure. So they pick a wounded partner who has not yet connected to their own dark feminine aspect because they haven't connected to their shadow yet. No shame. We've literally all been there. But as that happens, he's still desiring the dark feminine energy because there's something captivating about it. There's something dynamic. It's wild. It's raw. There's just something about it. But they're going to do it in secret. So they have the light feminine as the presentation to the world. She's digestible. On paper, she's perfect. She's the perfect wife. But there's this part of them, they're dark, energetic, that desires darkness. It desires the dark energetic to complement it. And they feel shame around it for the same reason we've been talking about. They feel shame, they feel dirty, they feel bad, they feel like, oh my God, I wish I didn't feel this way. And so they do things in the shadows, right? So they'll cheat with someone who's embodying feminine shadow energetics, call it femme fatale or dark energetics. They'll go pay for sex. They'll do whatever they do from a sex work perspective and hide it because they feel shame around that piece of themselves. So instead of owning it and picking a partner who can essentially like connect with them in that way, no, that's not going to be good for my image. So because it's not good for my image, I may as well just like have this feminine wife that looks good on paper and makes me feel digestible and like it's not going to cause like drama and stuff because I don't know what the heck's going on with that dark feminine energy. I don't understand what that shit is. That's crazy over there. And so they view it as a femme fatale. They view it as like dangerous, as whatever. And so they'd rather not. And so then they just do shit in the shadows if they're in a wounded state, right? And so this is where the whore Madonna complex comes in, or Madonna-Whore complex. And I'll link this in the description. The Madonna-Whore complex is the inability to maintain sexual arousal within a committed and loving relationship. Sigmund Freud was the first to identify it, who called it psychic impotence. It's a psychological complex that is said to develop in men who see women as either saintly Madonnas or whores, essentially. Men with this complex desire a sexual partner who has been degraded whore, while they cannot desire the respected partner, Madonna, the virgin, like the saintly one, the digestible one, the good on paper one. Where such men love, they have no desire, and where they desire, they cannot love. That was Freud. Freud argued that the Madonna-Whore complex was caused by a split between the affectionate and the sexual currents in male desire. So essentially what it's saying is like the split between their light and their dark energetics, because they also are suppressing it. They also feel shame around it, right? When we all have it, like we all have it. And so because of this, they create these dramas for themselves where they are doing things in the shadows and hiding shit because they have an entire aspect of themselves that they're suppressing and shaming and pretending isn't there and isolating and whatever. And then in moments of weakness, they go do some impulsive stuff to whatever, like scratch the itch. Because they aren't actually like embodying their fullness. They aren't actually like, they're suppressing an entire aspect of themselves, essentially. So this is like essentially men tend to marry who their peers approve of, right? The good wife on paper, it's like a degree or a status symbol for them. They like view it as like checking a box, which is so gross. Like we're human beings, very complex human beings with feelings. And so these men are picking people as if they're like degrees. Let me check the box. Now I got a wife. Okay, what's next? Right? It's ridiculous. So what tends to happen is that's their first wife. That's their first partner, their long-term partner, whatever. And then once they realize that wasn't the way, and they cause a bunch of drama in that relationship, not that the feminines are perfect, but you get my point, then they go and actually try and like find true fulfillment. And that true fulfillment for all parties involved then creates the connection to their dark energetics, their dark feminine energy. And it also will do it for the wife too, which is the cool part. It's painful. The whole process is painful, but by you and your partner essentially letting go of one another, you now get to a place where you're going through a death and rebirth process. You are transforming to get in touch with that deeper, darker aspect of yourself because it's part of who you are authentically in all of us. It shouldn't be shame. Trust me, I understand like it's very scary to be seen in your fullness, but the reality is it just is what it is. Like, it just is a part of all of us. This next second wife or this next embodiment that they can find true fulfillment in, potentially, if they do the work and actually, like, put in the work, likely less cookie cutter, right? This person's less digestible to society, but more fulfilling to them because they actually understand within themselves who they are and what they need and what fulfillment looks like for them at that stage because they did the, materialistic, check the box, digestible route first. It takes a very strong man who is secure within himself to be with a partner who is not necessarily like publicly digestible or accepted, at least in these patriarchal standards that we have today, right? And so again, when we're talking about the patriarchy, most of them are very deeply insecure. They're choosing things based off of their own insecurities and what makes them look good or whatever. It's all appearance-based. And so they're not actually choosing things out of authenticity, love, emotions, fulfillment, whatever. They're choosing things off of checking boxes, insecurities, and like appearances, which is why it's all fake. So if we all can connect to our dark aspect within all of us and just become friends with it and leverage our dark feminine energy to transform and go deep and get into the psyche and like become a full embodiment and walk alongside our shadow and be like, what up, dude? That was wild. Like, we crazy. But look at us go. If we can do that, then that is actually how we find true fulfillment. Because that's our wholeness. Because dark isn't necessarily bad or evil. And it's in all of us. It's in all of us. It just seems a little chaotic and a little crazy. And it's going to show your authenticity. Which is like, it should be good. That's like what we need to do. This is such a boring planet. Like, I remember when I was dating, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, by the way. I dated some incredible men. I don't know, you know. I just remember feeling like a lot of them were the same. And I found some incredible partners that I'm very grateful for, so I'm not trying to shame anyone. But when I was dating, I just kind of felt like it was a lot of the same people. And I know that's not true. But what was happening is it's like everyone puts on a persona. It's an appearance. They want to be digestible. They want to blend in. They want to be like everybody else. They want it to be cookie cutter. And someone like myself, that's not how I operate. Like, I actually had a hard time dating because I was looking for something that like stood out. Like, I wanted it to like be unique. Like, I don't want my husband to look just like every other husband. I want him to be like mine, you know, like not in like a controlling way, but it's like, I never understood why everyone dresses the same or like tries to look the same or acts the same or likes the same things. Like, I wanted to learn. I wanted someone who like, they're quirky and they're goofy and they're weird and yeah, maybe some darkness, especially for me. Like, psychologically, I'm like, what's that? You know? So I'm like way too deep of a person to not connect to people who have darkness, which has led me on some paths where I connect to some people that I probably shouldn't have, you know, but like, I don't regret it because that's a part of my own darkness, my own shadow. And I had to understand her. I had to understand, like, why are we attracted to this? Like, what is this about us that we're drawn to? And it's because I am deeply curious and I love mystery and I love solving problems and I love like, you know, all of that. And so I had to really like get aware of my own shadow to understand what is going on with me. And then as I am like aware of that, I then have to own her and I have to love her and know that like, my dog is yawning. I get to walk with her now and have like strength and pride in who she is. She's made some mistakes. She got a little wild sometimes, but I love that too. You know, like in those moments, like I knew exactly what I was doing and I never had intentions to hurt anybody, you know? That doesn't mean that I didn't hurt people, but I know why I do what I do. And I operate the way I do because I operate out of my moral compass. And it hasn't always been perfect, but I like that too. It's my process of learning. It's my process of growing, you know? And I think that's the cool part about the dark is when you go into the dark, you learn a lot. In this journey, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you've seen a lot of me. And I don't really care what people think of me. Sometimes I get insecure and I do, right? But the reality is like I am psychic and I read energy. So I see everybody's insecurities. And so I've gotten very comfortable at the fact that we all have them. And that makes me very easily vulnerable because I already see it in everyone else. And so when you grow up seeing it in other people, you are fine to accept it in yourself. And I didn't know that was a gift, you know, but that's a gift we all can tap into in our own ways in our dark feminine energy. We need it. We like need her. We need her for ourselves. We need her to transform. We need her as a collective. We need her. So stop judging her and don't call her masculine and dominant and difficult and whatever other bullshit you're going to send her way. Tap into her yourself, because you secretly are lusting after her. You secretly desire her. You secretly are so curious and magnetized to her because you wish that you were in touch with that part yourself, and you can be. You just have to own it and like love it, you know? And like, yeah, we all have our shit, you know? It's fine. But it can be scary, so I understand. But nonetheless, this is a video on the dark feminine energetic. This is a collective shadow we need to lift, and this is an energy I embody very well. Confusing to a lot of people, and I have to own that and understand that. But I am leading the charge along with tons of other people, right? Leading the charge by showing myself, because I see it all in all of you anyway. And that's the thing, is like, if you don't understand how it works to read energy, like there are people on the planet who see all your shit. So whatever you're hiding, you're not doing a very good job, especially up ahead. Like, we have a massive awakening on the planet. So you can either hop on and evolve with us all, and we can all like become psychic together and like see what your gifts are and see what mine are, and like evolve the planet and like become better versions of ourselves and laugh about who we were in our past and like walk with our dark aspects and be like, damn, that was a good story. Or we could hide and shame ourselves for this natural part of us that God designed to be a part of us, you know? I get it. It's a lot. Trust me, I got a shadow for sure. But at the same time, like, so do you, and love it and embrace your dark energetics, not for evil, but for evolution, for transformation, for rebirth, for like social change, inspired action, like depth, you know? I know it's easier said than done for some people. But you know, I don't know. I feel like we could all give it a shot. Okay, I'm going to leave this one here. I love you guys so much. I hope this is valuable, and I will see you on the next one. Okay, bye-bye.